Hi, I'm Kathy, and I'm here at the Cotton Blossom. I'm here to show you one of my favorite baby lock machines, the Triumph, an 8-thread serger that will do so many things and now new things. Let's look at it. So the first thing that I have to tell you about the Baby Lock Triumph and all of the upper end Baby Lock sergers is what they're famous for: jet air threading. If you've ever owned a serger that didn't have jet air threading, you know what I'm talking about. You can turn a latch, turn the hand wheel to close the tubular loopers, take your thread. Just going to show you how pain-free this can be. Get enough thread to touch your knee, poke it down in the little hole here, and there it is. It's threaded. Did you see it? It came right out. I'm going to do it again so you can watch. This is so spectacular. Get enough thread out to come down to touch your knee, because it has to travel through those loopers, so you need plenty of thread. Then I'm going to stick it in the little hole right here for the upper looper. Press this button, and there it is. It shoots right through. Both of my loopers are threaded, but it doesn't stop there. The Baby Lock Triumph can also jet air thread the needles. So watch this. I'm going to pull the needle thread out, separate them, and I've got the 01 needle here. Put it back here, pull this down. This is going to suck the thread into the needle. So I'm going to poke it in the eye right there. And there it is, all threaded. Pulls it right through, out the other side, and your needle is threaded. And now I'm ready to do the second needle. Isn't that easy? Both needles are threaded, close it up, and I'm ready to serge. How easy was that? That's one of the great features of the Triumph, but we're going to talk about a lot more. Stay tuned. So here I am at the Baby Lock Triumph. This machine combines the best of all the serging techniques. You used to be able to have a separate cover stitch and chain stitch machine and a 4-thread serger, but now the Triumph does it all. And let me show you some of the things that it can do. Right now it's set up as a 4-thread serge machine. You know all the wonderful things sergers can do in the 4-thread stitch. You have beautiful rolled hems that are just so perfect. Look at this linen napkin. You can turn these out. You could have 12 made by Thanksgiving. This machine will also do the beautiful wave stitch. I love this stitch for binding on the edges of covers and table mats and placemats. I even made a cover, a machine cover for my serger, and used the wave stitch as a binding around it. Didn't even have to put a binding on it. With decorative thread, it is gorgeous. 4-thread sergers are the go-to machine for sewing on knits. If you've ever sewn on knits, you know how they stretch and distort and can come out kind of wonky. The serger solves your pain point for sewing on knits. It is to die for. What else can a 4-thread serger do? I like to attach my quilt binding with the 4-thread serger. See how beautiful it ends up when you just serge it like that, flip it over. I even use fusible thread on my looper so that I can iron it on over and I don't have to use clips. That's a huge advantage. A 4-thread serger does that. What else does a 4-thread serger do? Make seams for clothing and garments, attach lace, make cording, and look at this. The cording is also, with your cording foot, can be attached between two pieces of fabric. Beautiful for cushions and clothing and upholstery and pillows, all sorts of things. Make your own cording, insert it with the serger. Attaching ruffles. With your ruffling foot, you can ruffle and attach in one pass. That's what was done here. So the 4-thread serger is remarkable in the Triumph. The 4-thread capabilities are endless in here. But the Triumph also functions and can do the 8-thread functions of a cover stitch and a chain stitch. Why is that important? Well, for sewing on, let's say, heavy-duty fabrics, a chain stitch, which is what's here, this is the back side of the chain stitch, is a very heavy-duty stitch. If I were sewing heavy-duty upholstery or something that was where the seam was going to have a lot of stress on it, I would want to use a chain stitch because it has multiple layers of threads in it, even though the top of it looks just like a sewing machine stitch. So the 8-thread serger can do the chain stitch. But the cover stitch is where it really, really shines. Let's look at an example of a cover stitch. Well, here's one right here. I used it decoratively. This is the cover stitch. I used a 3-thread cover stitch, 3 needles and a looper that makes this sort of a knit covering over the back of the fabric. Why would that be important? Well, if you're sewing and you're making a hem, let's say. Let's see if I have one here. If you're making a hem, you want to turn your hem up and just run it through one time. The hem is secured and the back of it, the raw edge, is completely covered up. That's why they call it a cover stitch. So with the cover stitch, you can have either 2 or 3 threads showing on the top. You turn your hem up and it covers the back of the hem. So you have no raveling, no coming loose. It is a one-pass hem on the 3-thread cover stitch. But look, on knits, it's even better. And any knit garment you have, if you look, you will have a hem done with a cover stitch. Parallel needle threads on the top, and then like a knit cover over the raw edge of the fabric. So it's a one-pass hem. And the double advantage is with knits, that hem stretches. Try that on a regular sewing machine. Your hem will pop. All the threads will come loose. But look on the serger with the cover stitch. You flip up your hem, one pass through the serger, and you have a beautiful hem. So with the 8-thread serger, when you are doing a 4-thread serge, you always want to have your knife cover on. That's how it's been done traditionally, because the knife is engaged a lot of times in 4-thread serging, and this has to cover it up so you won't cut your finger. But there's also the necessity for the loopers, the upper looper particularly, to work in a 4-thread serge. This knife cover allows that to happen. When changing, though, to the chain or cover stitch, it's always been necessary to put on a chain cover table. This is super simple to attach, and I have to make sure my looper is down, and there it is. Now I can do the cover stitch and the chain stitch using this table. The other benefit to this table has always been the ability to attach attachments. So I wanted to make some shoelaces or some tennis shoes. Look how cute. I used an attachment, the 36 millimeter double fold bias binder I used. It's a bias binder, and I used it to make these because I could just run the fabric. It folded it for me, stitched it under the needle, and I could make miles of shoelaces. The same way you can make belt loop binders and quilt binding. Here's an example of a binding I made with the chain stitch. This is a chain stitch, so I had to have this table on, and I attached a binding attachment here, and I can just run miles of fabric through the serger and attach this beautiful binding. That's how it's always been done. But guess what? Baby Lock has introduced a new attachment for the serger that allows you to do both things, the 4-thread serge and the chain cover stitch with the same table and use attachments. That's revolutionary in the serging world. This is the new Baby Lock overlock table attachment. Do you see how it has the knife cover and the flat space and the space to put attachments? So let me show you some of the things that I've been playing with this table. I love it. And it snaps on just like the other one. Here is the new overlock table for the Triumph. And do you see the places to do attachments here? But you also have a knife cover so you can do 4-thread, chain stitch, or overlock. Let me show you some things that are fantastic with this. With the 4-thread serge, I can attach, I already have a lace applicator foot on here, which is kind of like a 1/4-inch foot with a blade you would have for a sewing machine. It has a movable blade on it, so you can move it to exactly the stitch width that you want. And then I can attach a seam guide. Heretofore, with a 4-thread serger, you could not do this, but now we can attach a seam guide, line it up for the perfect 1/4-inch or 5/8 inch or 1/2 inch, whatever seam you want, attach it and run your fabric through. It's very simple to put on. And so one of the first things I had to do, I could not wait, was to see if I could do a perfect 1/4-inch seam for a quilt with this attachment and this serger. Here's what I did in the short run. Now, look at that. That's a pretty darn good seam, but look on the back here. This is where my mind was blown. Do you see how this is a perfect 1/4-inch, scant 1/4-inch, and look at how it lays down and nests all the seams. This was my first attempt, and it was just spectacular the way it turned out. I'll get better as I get better, but the machine performed perfectly. Here's another example of constructing a quilt block with the serger. I don't know if you can see this, but those corners nest perfectly. I'm not that good, but the machine is. And on the back, you can see how they nested perfectly in this quilt block. So I'm sold. I'm really excited about this feature, being able to use the seam guide and the lace applicator foot to get a perfect 1/4-inch seam. So I'm going to show you how I attached these pieces to make this quilt block. Here is my seam guide attached. This little lever just pops up and I can move it back and forth, but I put it on a scant 1/4-inch, locked it down. I have my lace applicator foot on, and I've used that little screw to move the blade back and forth, so it's at a perfect 1/4-inch. I've set my knife at the M position, so the width at the M position, so I know that's at a 1/4-inch, and it's going to take this fabric right on through. You see how it keeps it perfectly aligned as it moves through the serger. There's my perfect 1/4-inch seam. Open it up, press it, and it's beautiful. We were talking about 4-thread serging and 8-thread serging, or the cover stitch and chain stitch parts of the serger. But heretofore, they've always been two separate things. You can do 4-thread or you can do cover chain stitch. You had to transition your machine over to do that. The only way you were able to use attachments like this was for the cover and chain stitch part of the machine. Whoa, wow, have things changed with this new table. You can now attach this table, put the new, any attachment pretty much that Baby Lock makes for the 8-thread serger can go on here, and you can use the 4-thread rolled hem part of the machine. That is revolutionary. In fact, I was just thinking about it. It makes it like a third machine. It's like you now have a third machine with the evolution of this table. Incredible. So, me and my little brain started thinking, what could you do with this? What kinds of things could you do different with this? Well, you can do the standard 4-thread serge with the seam guide like I showed on piecing the quilt blocks. But what else could you do? What if we used an attachment to put binding on and used other threads? Well, okay, so I put binding on this piece right here and used just a heavy-duty thread. There's binding in there and the thread's covering it up. But that's okay, and that's kind of interesting, and it makes a nice edge for a quilt or a wall hanging or whatever. What if you used a variegated thread? Ooh, now this is really getting pretty and interesting. And do you see how beautifully fat and substantial that binding is and that decorative edge is? Because there's binding inside the 4-thread stitch. Okay, I thought, what else could we do? I got some pearl crown rayon. Now we're talking really heavy duty thread. Look at that beautiful edge. There's quilt binding in there because I was able to attach a binder, and there's it's almost like you've created a trim that's being sewn on. I'm just blown away by how beautiful this is. So, not to stop, I then decided, what if we put a heavier decorative metallic thread in there? And look what happened. That is just amazing to me. Just amazing. Here it is, and here's some samples of what you might get. This is a 4-thread overlock with the metallic thread without the quilt binding being attached. You can see it's pretty, but it's kind of wavy and not quite as fat and beautiful. This is the same exact stitch, same thread, with some quilt binding underneath or inside. Look how just plump and beautiful and substantial that is. I'm just in love with this idea. Also, here is, going back to cover chain stitch, I attached the binding, quilt bias binding around this with this attachment right here. This is a 28 millimeter bias binder, and used a cover chain stitch, put the metallic thread in the looper, the cover looper. You can see the chain stitch on the other side, and look how pretty that turned out to be. I could just so see that on the edge of a quilt, on the edge of a table runner. Just exciting. But look, I'm going to show you how easy this is to do. I have my serger threaded up with the heavy duty, this is a Razzle Dazzle metallic thread in the upper looper. I have a Aeroflock, little fat fluffy thread in the lower looper, and just regular needle sewing threads in the 0102 needles. I attached the new overlock table, screwed down the bias binder on it. I have a strip of bias that I'm feeding through, and then I have a piece of quilted fabric. Look how beautiful. Can you imagine a table runner, a quilt hanging? Amazing decorative uses for this. And all it is a 4-thread overlock with a bias binder attaching a quilt binding or a bias binding onto the edge of the fabric. Just stunning. I'm so excited. I'm not through exploring. I think there are going to be a lot of more fun things that we're going to discover that we can do with this table. This was just the beginning. So come see us at the Cotton Blossom. We have the overlock tables coming in. We have, of course, always the fabulous Triumph in stock. We would love to show it to you. Come see us.